Political ideology aside, a very savvy business guy, a guy that, of course, is on Shark Tank, and people bring in the inventions, their ideas for businesses, and he does a yay or nay, I believe, for some school. By the way, Ty Simpson's got the same deal on the table right now. $6.5 million by one of a Big Ten school or SEC school.
Mark Cuban just said out loud what everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to admit. WNBA players are demanding millions that simply aren't there. In one sentence, he exposed the entire negotiation strategy as nothing more than a fantasy. The league isn't hoarding cash. There isn't extra cash. And the kicker, players were repeatedly warned by people who actually understand how professional sports leagues operate financially. They ignored it then, and judging by the current chaos in these CBA talks, it's still unclear if they're listening now. Let's break it down. The WNBA and its Players Association have been tangled in CBA negotiations for months, with tensions steadily rising. Players are asking for major salary increases, revenue sharing, and a bigger slice of the pie they believe they helped grow. On paper, it sounds fair, but here's where it gets tricky, and where the players' camp has stayed unusually quiet. From the outside, the WNBA appears to be booming. New teams are joining, fresh broadcast deals are landing, corporate sponsors are lining up, viewership records are being touted, and Caitlin Clark jerseys are flying off the shelves. Naturally, players looked at all that and said, we want our cut. The problem, most of what they were seeing wasn't long-term revenue. It was a series of one-off events dressed up to look like a permanent financial shift. When you base salary demands on temporary spikes, you're building on shaky ground. Mark Cuban recognized this instantly. So did David Sampson, former Miami Marlins president, a man who's been in owner meetings, negotiated CBAs, and understands the real nuts and bolts of sports finance. The Players Association, either they didn't see it or they chose to ignore it. Cuban didn't have to weigh in on the WNBA. He's no longer an NBA owner. He sold the Mavericks years ago and has nothing to gain by stepping into this debate. Yet he did, and his message was surgical. He made it crystal clear. The WNBA, under its current structure, cannot provide the massive raises being demanded. Not because owners are stingy, not because of a secret vault of cash. The money the players are asking for simply doesn't exist as reliable year-over-year revenue. Here's why Cuban's words hit so hard. He isn't some anti-player commentator. He spent decades as an NBA owner. He knows the difference between a franchise that truly has money and one that only looks like it does. Right now, the WNBA looks rich, but the appearance of financial growth is not the same as sustainable, bankable growth. At the scale the players are asking for, it just isn't there yet. Cuban even outlined a potential roadmap. Was it flawless? No. The salary structure he suggested had its flaws, but the underlying message was critical, something players desperately need to hear from someone they respect. You're negotiating for money the league cannot realistically guarantee. David Sampson took it a step further, breaking it down with the kind of cold, transactional clarity that comes only from someone who has actually built and managed a professional sports franchise. On his podcast, David Sampson broke down the financial reality that's making this WNBA CBA so tough to finalize. The Players Association has been pointing to expansion fees, relocation fees, and one-off broadcast bonuses as proof the league is overflowing with cash. Their argument is basically, look at all this money coming in, give us our cut. Sampson didn't mince words. He called it exactly what it is, a misconception. Those are one-time payments. You can't build ongoing salaries around money that shows up once and disappears. Think about it. An expansion fee comes when a new team joins. It happens once. You collect it, spend a chunk on facilities, staffing, and operations to get the new team running, and then it's gone. It doesn't reappear next year. The same goes for relocation fees or a one-time broadcast bonus when a new TV deal is signed. But player salaries? Those are recurring costs every single year. And if your salary proposals are based on funds that were never meant to recur, you're basically setting up a slow-motion financial crisis. Sampson was blunt. The more the Players Association insists on counting one-off payments as permanent revenue, the less likely a deal becomes. No serious ownership group will agree to recurring salaries based on money that will never return. To put it in concrete numbers, the players came in asking for a salary cap around $9.5 million. The league countered at roughly $5.65 million. That's not a minor disagreement. It's a fundamental question of what the league can realistically afford. So where does this end? Both sides have to give ground. Players will need to accept that $9.5 million was never realistic. It was an opening position built partly on projected revenues that don't hold up. The league, meanwhile, will have to move up from $5.65 million. Elite talent won't stay for numbers that undervalue the market. Realistically, the compromise is likely somewhere in the $6.5 to $7 million range, possibly a bit higher if the players adjust their stance on revenue sharing. What does this mean for players in real terms? More money than they currently earn, incremental progress. But not the transformational payday some advocates have been hyping online. That dream was always inflated, and those who truly believed it are about to face a hard reality. Wnba President Nia Collier recently gave an interview that, read closely, reveals the players' mindset. She said, "Someone is going to have to fold." That's not the voice of a negotiator feeling victorious. It's the voice of someone crunching the numbers and realizing the reality isn't quite what they hoped. She also reinforced that players believe their demands are fair and that they need to stay firm, which is standard union negotiation rhetoric. But beneath that confident framing was an implicit acknowledgement. Compromise is coming. She knows it and she said it outright. They're in a negotiation and no one is walking away unscathed. The real question now is how much the players will have to compromise versus what they thought they were entitled to. Because right now, those two numbers are worlds apart, and the season is fast approaching. Time is a real factor. Any leverage from threatening to withhold labor disappears the moment the calendar forces a decision. Owners can sit in uncertainty longer than players, who need paychecks and need to be on the court. There's another piece that gets overlooked but completely undermines the players' financial argument: expansion fees. The WNBA has announced plans to add new teams, and the Players Association has been treating those fees as proof the league has cash to burn. But let's think this through. If expansion fees are what fund salary increases, the league would have to keep expanding forever just to cover those commitments. That's not sustainable. The NFL hasn't added a team in decades. The NBA goes years between expansions. You cannot base a labor deal on the assumption that new franchises will appear on schedule to generate money you've already spent. What happens in year 4 of a new CBA if there are no expansion fees? What covers those salaries then? The players don't have a solid answer, and the owners know it. That's exactly why this revenue argument is one the league will never concede. So what's likely to happen? Expect another week or two of public statements, dramatic social media posts, and some flashy moves designed to grab attention online. Then, right before the drop-dead deadline forces a resolution, both sides will agree on a number somewhere around $6.5 to $7 million, shake hands, and declare victory. Players will claim they pushed hard and made progress. The league will say it invested in its athletes while staying financially responsible. Both sides will spin the outcome positively, but the reality is this: the deal lands exactly where it was always going to land. For the players promised a revolution, they'll get an evolution instead. Progress? Yes. Transformational change? Not even close. And the deeper structural issue, the gap between what this league actually earns and what players believe they deserve, remains unresolved. It will simply be deferred to the next CBA cycle, starting the whole debate again. Mark Cuban didn't reveal anything new that financial analysts and sports executives haven't been discussing behind closed doors for months. He just said it publicly with his name attached in a way no one could ignore. WNBA players are undeniably talented, and the league is on the rise. The game itself has never been better. Nobody is disputing that. But growth doesn't instantly translate into revenue, and you can't hand out money that doesn't exist yet. This isn't a political jab. It's not an attack on the players. It's simply how every professional sports league has operated throughout history. Players who grasp that reality negotiate smartly. Players who don't risk signing a deal they feel shortchanged, despite the fact that the numbers were always going to end up right where they are. The quiet truth has now been spoken out loud. The real question is, who's actually paying attention?